My Tongan identity is special to me. I take great pride, maybe too much sometimes, in being Tongan. Since the day I could first remember things, I can recall my elders teaching me about the Anga Whakatonga, the Tongan way. From the way that I greet people to the clothes that I wear for a Sunday service. Anga Whakatonga is a lifestyle that has been passed down from generation to generation because it holds precious value. But the thing is, if I'm being honest, it wasn't always like that for me. I didn't always have an appreciation for my Tongan identity, getting made fun of for certain things that I thought was normal. For example, for Tongans, we wear traditional clothing for special occasions. My high school graduation, I was supposed to wear my traditional tupenu, ta'ovala, sandals, and a button shirt with a tie. But I kept complaining to my mom that I didn't want to wear it because I didn't want the other kids to look at me funny or make fun of me for wearing a skirt and a sandals. All while the other guys, they got to wear their fancy dress shirts, the pants, and the fancy shoes. I didn't want to be embarrassed. But to my mom and my elders, it's a special occasion and I should be proud of my achievements while also being proud of who I am. I just didn't see it that way then. Like any other young kid that didn't feel like they fit in, I fought against my Tongan identity. This is all important to note because what I just described between appreciating my Tongan identity and in my earlier years fighting against it are the exact struggles that our elders and younger Tongan generations struggle with. The elders are trying to hold and pass on cultural traditions that have value, while the younger generation is trying to fit into normal society, even if in their minds it means there may not be a need for hanga whakatonga. But because, as I mentioned in the paper, the church is where the immigrant culture can thrive and survive, that intergenerational struggle is most evident within the church walls. There is the misunderstanding between both old and young generations that has hindered the Tongan church ministry. Most of that hindrance falls on the younger generation, and that is why I mention that the involvement of younger individuals in the church is at a slow decline, and many of the younger generations don't care for the church. I got the opportunity to speak with a young member of the church, and he described to me that he doesn't feel like it is his church. He feels like it is his parents' church, and he doesn't want to be a part of it. He shared with me that it is ruining his experience with church in general. He doesn't see a need for the church, and it is causing him to want to leave when he gets the chance. I know this is the truth for most, if not all, of the young Tongans. They're seeking to be a part of something where they feel valid and they are not finding it in the church. So instead, they try to find it elsewhere, and most of the places they find value, it is leading them to dangerous and unhealthy lifestyles. It just goes to show that the young crowd are not being fed. The reason for that, I believe, is because one of the struggles that the elders in the Tongan church have is holding on to the cultural narrative of young people must listen and obey their elders. This has affected the youth ministry. The younger leaders can't or don't want to lead because they get stepped over by elders who don't want things a certain way because that is not the way it has always been done. Even if, from the younger perspective, it is helpful for the ministry. There is no freedom for young leaders to lead as they feel convicted by God. Also, there's that thought because someone is younger, they don't know as much. And it makes it very difficult for young people to want to be a part of something that doesn't take them into consideration. Don't get me wrong, I believe it is an important value to respect our elders. They are the ones who have paved the way for us younger people to have a future. But in regards to the Tongan church, if growth is important for us to keep the Tongan church intact, um, I think it would be helpful for the elders to listen to the younger generation and what they believe could be helpful for the church. They can empower the youth to take some lead. I think this would help to start mending the broken relationships between the younger people and the church. It sounds beautiful, but I understand it's going to take some work. This is also not a one sided affair either. This street goes both ways. The young generation must listen and listen closely. It's also our duty to hear what our elders have to say as well. We have to keep in mind the heart of our older people. They have come from many, many miles away to a land unlike where they are from. And they came with only the clothes on their back and the Tongan way. That is all they know. So it is through the church that they can express this freely. There are no other places here in the US where they can feel at home but at the church. There's no expectation for them to live up to social norms within the church walls. The young people are also at fault because they are too stubborn in their approach. They believe because they are younger and more educated than the older people, they believe they know everything. And it doesn't work out well that way. Also, because of the stubbornness to not humble themselves, they just turn away completely. And though I understand that the elders have to give ear to their cry, it still doesn't help if they just ignore everything completely. Our young people must keep this in mind. There are legit reasons why the elders push us younger people to understand the ways that they have been taught. I believe that both generations have something to bring to the table. The old have something to bring just as much as the new have something to offer. In Matthew 13:52, he said to them, "Therefore, every teacher of the law who has become a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old." When we think about our thoughts or opinions in terms of treasures, it makes it more valuable. This could be used at how we look at the thoughts of the older and younger generations in the Tongan church. Matthew depicts Jesus as part of the old covenant that God had with his people, and he did this by writing his genealogy early in the book. This shows that Jesus, as he states in his own words, didn't come to completely rid the old law, but Jesus also in the new, but Jesus is also the new because of his fulfillment of the law. The law is as relevant as Jesus is to those who choose to follow him. One does not cancel out the other. They both hold weight. I believe this is what Matthew is trying to tell us through this verse. We can't accept the new, Jesus, without also accepting the old, the law, because they both mirror God and they both are treasures. In the same way that is truth, we can also transfer that to how we look at the old and young generation in the Tongan church. The young people bring the treasures of a new way of thinking that could help the church effectively communicate to younger souls. The old people also have a treasure that allows for the church to be faithful to who they are. I think that both of these treasures help the Tongan church to be a growing, faithful body of Christ. The first thing that the church must do to make progressive steps toward growth is to start a conversation that includes the voices of the old and the young people. It can't be just elders speaking what they want, but it has to include the vision of the younger people. This is the start of empowering all the people in the Tongan church. Old and new treasures can be brought to the table. After a conversation, there has to be action behind what was said. It can't stop at the awareness stage. Then what needs to happen is young leaders need to be given power in how the church ministry can be led, even if this means two separate services where each service is aimed for young Tonga people or a service for elders. But decision making should include young leaders. I believe that it would be a good first step for the church growth and the sustainment of the Tongan church. One thing for Tongans to remember is the core value of Tauhiva. It highlights the importance of caring for your family, your community, and your friends. The word Tauhi means to care for, and Va means the space between things or people. We understand the importance of Tauhiva from a young age. It's in our genes to keep good relations with the people we care for, and in this case, for our church, it is our duty to look out for the people within it. In the church, it is important for both generations to tauhi the space between each other, listening and empathizing with one another, to hear each other's stories because we understand the power of them. Finally, I want to mention that I wrote this paper because if you haven't noticed already, I have a heart for the Tongan people. I have grown to appreciate what I have been taught, and the best way for me to show my appreciation is to help give back however I can. The best way for me to do that is to lead the youth of the church. The youth is not subject to a specific age group. I see it as the 1.5 generation in our church. I care for them and have always felt a calling in my life to help them. I think this issue between the generations has become the status quo in the church, and I want to help our members combat it. The only way for things to change is if we are willing to have those hard conversations. This is one of those tough conversations that we need to have. But I think it could help with the generational struggle now, as it could also help with the generational struggles that we will come face to face with later on down the road. So I hope that this paper can in some way help to bring our people together and that we can all come to appreciate what our Tongan church is. Malo Alpito.